right stop, left, minus 5.
Welcome to WRC the magazine. Snow and ice has so far provided the footings for the 2013 World Rally Championship. It's time for a change as the WRC prepares for the first gravel event of the year in the mountains of Mexico. Coming up, find out why Mexico leaves both the cars and the drivers completely out of breath. We talked to Mads Osberg about his new factory Ford drive and his plans for the future.
I'm still trying to win an event the way I want to win it.
And we'll find out what the teams change on the cars as they travel from the snow of Sweden to the gravel of Mexico.
Because in Mexico compared to Sweden the temperature is much higher, we have to run in Mexico a much bigger radiator.
And of course we'll take a look back at some of the best stories from this classic event. But first, the frozen forests of Rally Sweden provided the backdrop for round 2 of the World Rally Championship. Mikko Hirvonen quickly ruled himself out of the running with this roll on the opening stage on Friday morning. 25 minutes were lost in the recovery. Meanwhile, fellow Finn Jari Matti-Latvala was unable to match the pace of the leaders, and when his intercom failed on the penultimate stage of day 2, his fate was sealed and he had to settle for 4th. Hampered by engine problems early on, Mads Osberg quickly dropped out of the battle for the lead. Some quick roadside repairs kept him in the rally and he battled back to secure 3rd place by the end of the weekend. And that left the 2 Sebastians. It was Loeb who held the early advantage after the Thursday night Super Special, but that was the only time he would lead the rally over the course of the weekend. The 9 times world champion was being outclassed by his former teammate Sébastien Ogier.
He's doing really well, so he didn't make any mistake. He was still very fast in the morning, so we can just try, but I think no real chance.
On just his 2nd event in the Polo R WRC, Sébastien Ogier proved unstoppable, taking the lead from Loeb on Friday morning and not once handing it back to become only the 2nd non-Scandinavian to ever win on the Swedish snow.
We worked really hard all the year with the team and everybody did a lot of effort for that, but we never expected to be as performant as we were this weekend already.
There's final confirmation of Ogier's win over Loeb. The pair separated by 41.8 seconds after 3 days of rallying. Osberg confirmed in 3rd. As one Seb leaves the top of the leaderboard, another one replaces him. Ogier leads the Drivers' Championship with 46 points. Loeb is 3 points further back. Osberg lies 3rd ahead of Sordo. In the manufacturer's standings, the Citroën Total Abu Dhabi World Rally team hold their advantage 2 points clear of the Volkswagen boys. But with Sébastien Loeb only competing in 2 more events this year, the onus now falls on the shoulders of Mikko Hirvonen and Danny Sordo to keep the French mark out in front. Sweden also played host to round 2 of the Support Championships. 13 WRC2 cars arrived to take on the frozen forest roads, including former PWRC entrant Anders Grondel. The Norwegian was looking for a strong result on the snow, albeit in the least powerful of all the WRC2 cars.
I lost count on how many times I've done this rally, so I'm really excited. Yeah, it's going to be good fun, and the conditions looks excellent this year.
And it was the first time on the snow for championship leader and Skoda Motorsport driver Sepp Wiegand. The German was planning on a cautious approach. As the rally got underway, and despite the lack of power, by stage 4, Grondel's experience of driving on snow was paying dividends. The Norwegian found himself leading the WRC2 field by 10 seconds. Meanwhile, on only his 2nd event on the snow, Yazid Al-Raji in his M-Sport Run Ford Fiesta RRC car was keeping Grondel within his sights and the main challenger for the lead. Further back, Wiegand was unable to keep up with the leaders and closed out his Rally Sweden in a respectable 3rd overall. But as the weekend progressed, Al Rajhi became more and more confident with the Fiesta in the snow and soon caught and passed Grondel for the lead, and he never looked back. The Saudi driver went on to claim a well-deserved WRC2 victory.
I have only one race in the snow, and this second I win it. It's, I think, very good for me and also for the team and for co-driver and for everybody.
Al Rajhi's final winning margin eventually extended to 43 seconds over Grondel, with Wiegand hanging on for third. It was another good showing for the Ukraine's Yuri Protasov, running with the Simtek team, closing out the top four. Depp Wiegand remains at the top of the championship standings, 13 points clear of Protasov in second. That win for Al Rajhi puts him third, just 2 points further back. 2013 marks the 10th anniversary of the running of Rally Mexico in the FIA World Rally Championship, and in those years it's given us some of the most spectacular images in the WRC. So with 2 rounds down, Mexico plays host to round 3. The rally covers a total of 395 competitive kilometres, with Rally HQ based in the town of Leon, 320 kilometres northwest of the country's capital, Mexico City. The event gets underway on Thursday night with 2 super specials, but it's Friday morning when the cars head out to the mountains for the first of 3 full days of competition, also taking in a brand new 30-kilometre stage aptly named El Chocolate. Another unique trait is that Mexico is the only indoor service park of the year based inside the Polyforum. First included on the WRC calendar in 2004, Rally Mexico has grown and grown in popularity. It's both a driver and a fan favourite. In particular, the rally opener run on Thursday evening through the UNESCO World Heritage Status city of Guanajuato.
Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I have no words. A lot of things for a small Norwegian, I can say. So it's a very good feeling.
I'm sure people are having a good time.
Thousands of fans pack into this historic site to catch a glimpse of the cars and drivers before the rally gets underway. And this year sees another brand new 2-kilometre street stage run immediately after the Guanajuato test. A total of 13 World Rally cars will arrive in Mexico. Jari-Matti Latvala and Sebastian Ogier represent the Volkswagen team, while Mikko Hirvonen and Danny Sordo head up the main Citroën Total Abu Dhabi team, with Chris Atkinson making a return for the sister Citroën team. 6 Ford Fiestas will start in Mexico, with Mads Osberg and Evgeny Novikov scoring for the factory Qatar M Sport team. And making a welcome return to the championship is Ken Block in his new Hoonigan Racing Division run Ford Fiesta. You'll notice one man is missing from the list. The king of the Mexican mountains, Sebastian Loeb, will not compete this year, which means for the first time since 2006, we're guaranteed a new winner. But don't be fooled. Run at 2,000 metres above sea level in temperatures as high as 35 degrees. This is a challenge unlike any other in the WRC. It's the first gravel event of the year and provides some of the harshest conditions the World Rally Championship will see in 2013. Mexico tests both the cars and the drivers.
Well, the biggest challenge, first of all, is the altitude, because you go there and you're up to sort of 6,000 feet, which in effect basically means that you've almost got 30% reduction in power. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that you optimize your engine to the best possible way that you can run at high altitude.
In that condition, the air is very thin, and you have only maybe 75% of the power on the engines what you have in Europe, and so it's a bit more difficult with that. You have to keep the engine on the working area. It's more critical in Mexico than any other rally.
We lose quite a lot of power on the stages, which makes
your driving style a bit different. You need to think about that when you go into a corner, because you need to try to carry as much speed through it and be as early as possible on the throttle. So the altitude is a big challenge.
The drivers are affected as much as the cars with a lower oxygen on the high altitude. So the drivers have to be really fit, and they have to go there early enough to really get their body used to the altitude. And from the cars, it's the same. It's very much on the engine side. You have less oxygen, so you have to be very sensitive on how you calibrate your engine for that altitude.
So we know that Mexico is a unique challenge for the teams and drivers, but just how much of a difference does running at altitude make, and what's the science behind it? Cue WRC driver Matthew Wilson, a senior lecturer from John Moores University in Liverpool, and an altitude chamber for a little experiment.
Okay, Matt, so welcome to John Moores. So we're going to be going into our hypoxic chamber very shortly, and then in effect what we're going to do is simulate the effects of being at altitude at the same level as Mexico. Bring you in, put you on the bike, and we're going to exercise you for 15 minutes. We'll measure heart rate, and then we'll take you from this, which is a normal chamber, sea level, into our altitude chamber. We're going to do the same thing. We'll measure heart rate again, and we'll look at a comparison between the two. So if you're happy, we'll just go straight through. Yeah.
The first test is set at sea level, with Matt's workload set at 150 watts, the equivalent to a steady bicycle ride, with his heart rate being constantly monitored.
You've got 2 minutes left, Matt.
After 15 minutes of cycling at sea level, Matt's heart rate is remaining constant at 135 beats per minute.
Okay, Matt, if you want to stop now, well done, you finished the test. So at sea level, your saturation of oxygen is 97, which is good, and your heart rate went to 135. So it's dropped a little bit now because you've stopped. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the other chamber, and we'll see how you perform and your body copes with altitude. It won't take long for the environment you're in to actually affect you, and then your saturation of oxygen will start to drop, and your heart rate will start to go up to compensate for that.
After just 5 minutes exercising at the same altitude as in Mexico, Matt's body is already beginning to react to the effects of altitude.
So, in effect, what we've got here is you've dropped in your saturation relatively quickly. So you're down from 99 to 93%. So to cope with that, you increase your heart rate and your ventilation to get more oxygen in and deliver it to the working muscle. So if you remember in the other chamber, your heart rate only increased 135 at the end of 15 minutes. So altitude's having a marked effect on your body.
Amazingly, at the same altitude as Mexico, we can see that Matt's heart is having to work much harder than it was at sea level conditions to compensate for the lack of oxygen available to be delivered to his muscles. His heart rate rises to 150 beats per minute, 15 more than at sea level. This feeling of breathlessness is exactly the same for the engine. At sea level, the density of the air flowing into the combustion chamber is higher, giving maximum engine power output. However, at altitude, the engine suffers in the same way that the human body does. Less air available means a lower air-fuel mixture in the combustion chamber, which results in a lower overall power output. It's simple. At altitude, both the drivers and the cars suffer, but in Mexico, that's far from the only challenge. Join us after the break when we continue our look ahead to round 3 of the championship and the key changes made to the WRC cars as they travel from the snow of Sweden to the mountains of Mexico. We'll catch up with new factory M-Sport driver Mads Osberg, and of course we'll take a look back at the best bits from this epic rally. Don't go away. But before all that, the WRC is a motorsport like no other. The cars run on all different types of surface and need to be adapted and set up to suit them, from the super smooth tarmac of France to the gravel and jumps of Finland. Or, in this case, from the snow and ice of Rally Sweden to the rough rocks and ruts of Rally Mexico. So, as the cars travel from the freezing conditions of Scandinavia to the heat, altitude and rough roads of Guanajuato, how do the cars change? Volkswagen Motorsport's technical director François-Xavier de Maison, or FX for short, explains all.
Going from Sweden Rally to Mexico Rally, the main difference is the tire. We can see that in Sweden it's mainly a stud holder. When we go to Mexico, then it's a proper tire with rubber. You know, you have a different pattern with blocks and a lot of grooves to just evacuate all the loose gravel and get to the driver, I mean, a good grip. But the grip is coming just from the rubber and the blocks, not from the stud like in Sweden. It's also a very rough rally, so we have a lot of reinforcement on the side to avoid puncture. Because in Mexico, compared to Sweden, the temperature is much higher, we have to run in Mexico a much bigger radiator than the one we use in Sweden. This radiator will allow the engine to run a much lower temperature, which is a really important factor in Mexico, compared to Sweden, where the cold temperature just allows us to run a very small radiator to get the engine in the right temperature. The other, I would say, main difference between Sweden and Mexico is in Sweden, because of the snow, that the car can be stuck in a ditch. By rules, we need to carry 2 shovels in the car. That will be a big help for the driver and the co-driver to dig the car out of the ditch if they really need. But for Mexico, this is definitely not a use, and we just throw it away.
After 7 years running in the WRC as a privateer entry, for 2013 Norway's Mads Osberg has deservedly landed himself a full-time factory driver of the Qatar M Sport team. We caught up with him in Sweden to find out a little bit more about his past and plans for the future.
I think my first experience with motorsport was when I was 4 years old. I was driving a motorbike at that point. But I think it took quite a while before I really wanted to do motorsport and work with it. I was the co-driver for my father, and he was doing rallies. I sort of was on rallies, I saw it, I enjoyed it a lot, and I thought, okay, maybe one day I will try it. He has done rallies for many years, so obviously I probably wouldn't have had that interest if he wasn't doing it. So that is it's probably the main reason.
Mads' introduction into the WRC was not via the usual support championship routes. Instead, at just 18 years old, he began his first World Rally Championship event in a WRC car.
That was not really planned. It just ended up that way. After I did the education rallies in Sweden with the Ascona and with the Volvo, I was in contact with Subaru Norway, and we talked about the contract and if they wanted to support me, and they would. So we saw some great progress in 2006 and 2007, and I think it was in that period where I saw that, okay, this might be an opportunity for the future. And obviously we had some years with struggling and had some difficulties, but we learned a lot from it, and at least the first couple of years were really important to me.
With his learning years over, Mads was soon fighting for victories, and the first came in Portugal 2012, but not as the Norwegian would have wanted it. The rally winner, Mikko Hirvonen, was excluded after the event, and so Mads, who finished in second place, was then awarded the win by default.
It's not the way you want to win an event. You want to be on the top of the podium. You want to... Yeah, it was different. I didn't want that feeling when I won my first event, so I'm still trying to win an event the way I want to win it.
And never has there been a better chance, having fulfilled his goal as a full-time factory driver for the M Sport Qatar team.
I've been working for that for many, many years. I'm just so happy to be in the team and to work with Malcolm and the rest of the guys. It's definitely one of the biggest dreams I had when I started rallying, and I've reached a lot of my goals so far. One of the biggest ones was to be a factory driver, and I'm at that point now, and then I want to win rallies, and then I want to fight for win in the championship. So I'm a few steps away from my dream, and when I'm there I will try to do it again.
Remember these famous pictures? Join us after the break as we relive these famous stories and much, much more from this classic event. Don't go away. Welcome back. First run in 2004, the Mexican mountains quickly taught the world's best that this rally was not for the faint-hearted. It was to be one of the most bruising in WRC history. The first retirement of the weekend came when Sebastian Loeb ripped the sump guard off his Citroën Zara. Next came Petter Solberg, who was lucky to escape with minor damage after this brush with the wall. However, on arriving back at the time control, his Subaru was halted with a flat battery, and the Norwegian had to rely on external assistance from some fans to push him back into service. The result was a 5-minute time penalty. Things weren't going much better for Peugeot and Marcus Gronholm.
60 enää jäljellä, kato mieti siitä. Ja vasen nopea, suppuu. Löi käsille. We have no power steering.
No power steering. And we have 2 long stages to go. I'm fed up with this car.
It got worse for Peugeot as teammate Harry Rovanperä suffered a broken steering arm, which left his 307 on just 3 wheels. He did make it back to base, but lost 16 minutes in the process. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz was battling for the win in the sole remaining Citroën Zara, but the Mexican mayhem just kept on coming. This roll ruined any chances of victory, and the Spaniard had to settle for 3rd overall. That left the 2 Ford Focuses of Marco Martin and Francois Duval. The pair had kept out of trouble all weekend, and as others fell by the wayside, it turned into an historic Ford 1-2, with Marco leading the Blue Oval home to become the first ever winner of Rally Mexico. One year on, and Sebastian Loeb was looking to overturn the form book from 2004, running 2nd overall after the first stage. But damper failure gradually began to rip the right rear of his Citroën Zara suspension to shreds. He and co-driver Daniel Elena did what they could to repair the damage, but as each stage passed, it became clear the Citroën was in bad shape. The drive back to midday service eventually ripped the wheel off, and the pair soon caught the attention of the local Federale, who were not best pleased with Daniel's novel way of keeping the weight off the damaged rear corner. Some firm negotiations from Elena, and the result was a police escort back to service, where began one of the fastest suspension changes in WRC history. Sebastian went on to reward the team by fighting back up the leaderboard, and on the final stage of the rally he jumped from 6th to 4th overall. Meanwhile, Mexico gave Spain's Dani Sola the biggest off of his WRC career. This terrifying roll brought his challenge for 5th place to a very abrupt end. Up at the front, Petter Solberg held off the charge from Marcus Gronholm to celebrate an emphatic victory in 2005 for the factory Subaru team. But since then, Sebastian Loeb has confirmed himself as king of the mountains. The Frenchman has reigned supreme since 2006, seemingly not a statistic he was even aware of.
I won it since 2006. Not bad.
But his absence from the entry list this year means that will all change. We will have a new winner in Mexico in 2013, but it's a test like no other and far too close to call.
There's a bit of everything. Some of the stages are really technical, some are really fast, some sections are a little bit narrow and twisty. So you get everything. So in a way it's quite challenging rally for drivers, and it can really be rough as well in places.
The roads are very solid. They are very hard. There's normally quite a lot of loose gravel on the top, so it's quite slippy. Then you have sometimes like a concrete dips where car goes up like that. So you have to be a bit careful with that.
It's physically very challenging. So if you have all these 3, the high altitude, the high temperature, and the physical challenging stages, all that comes together and makes it very hard for the drivers.
Going to Mexico, you need to prepare yourself to drink a lot more. Also the lack of oxygen for the drivers and co-drivers is big, and not just the car, but for us as well.
it's completely different life than here in Europe. So it was nice to discover, and then Guanajuato was a really nice village.
Fantastic rally, great concept of an event. You know, all the stages are basically within sort of 50-60 kilometers of the service part, and obviously one of the best starts of an event anywhere in the World Rally Championship in the old town of Guanajuato.
Altitude, blistering heat, rough roads and some of the most technical stages in the world. Join us for round 3 of the WRC. It's not to be missed.